I'm Lin-Manuel Miranda, and you're listening to Hard NOC Life.
Well, it's the NOC in full color, you see me? The Hard NOC Life.
Happy New Year, Hard NOC Life. I'm Keith Chow.
I'm Britney Monet.
I'm Dominic Ma.
How you guys doing? Hard NOC Life is back for 2022. It doesn't even feel like a real year, 2022.
It's 2022.
I don't know about you.
Gonna be all right.
Are you feeling 22?
Spiritually.
So, we took a couple weeks off there at the end of 2021. Now it's a new year, a new show, a new us, a new Nerds of Color, a new Hard NOC Life. What are your New Year's resolutions, if there are? Do you even believe in New Year's? Who believes in New Year's? We don't. You can choose any 365-day period to fail at shit, right? Like, why does it need to be at the beginning of every year?
I think I set goals in general for the year. So, like, my goal last year was to do more podcasting, and I did that.
Yeah, and you're like, shit, I did too many. Let's scale it back.
I know. Now I'm, like, doing a lot going into this year. I technically doing 3, but, like, just 2 of them happen to be on the same feed, right. So it might seem like one podcast. It might only seem like 2 podcasts to some people, but I am technically doing 3 this year. But my goal this year is to do, like, because I did a lot of voice acting over the years, even if it's just with friends, and I've, like, I need to get back to being in front of the camera, so that's my goal for this year.
Nice.
And I already did something, like, honestly, on, was it the second day in? Because my friend asked me to be in a short, so
cool.
I did that. So I've already done, like,
so you met your goal. You met your goal on day 2 of 2022. So
yeah, so that was to do more acting in front of the camera. But I feel like it's only one project, so I at least got to do 2 projects in front of the camera this year.
Keep it 2-faced and like have everything end in 2, right? You gotta have 2 of it, 2 at least. How about you, Dominic? You have any goals for this new year other than perhaps like leaving the house and the pandemic being over?
Right. I mean, I'm gonna do some exercise to get in a good mood, because I know that works and one should do it. And that's the ultimate goal, is to get in a good-ish mood about things. And yourself, Keith?
Yeah, I like I said, I don't really believe in resolutions. I think goal setting is good. But the one thing I did do over the break was watch a shit ton of stuff. And there's a bunch of stuff that we didn't get to talk about because we took a little holiday hiatus. So I know some folks who are listening to this podcast are like, what did they think of Hawkeye? What did they think of Boba Fett? And for what it's worth, I watched a bunch of movies over the break as well. We watched Ghostbusters Afterlife. We watched Matrix Resurrections. We did a Lin-Manuel double feature and watched Tick, Tick, Boom and Encanto back to back, which was pretty cool. Yeah, I love Tick, Tick. That might be my favorite movie of the year. Like,
I think so too.
It's my favorite Andrew Garfield performance. He should get an Oscar for that.
Oh, I think he's going to. He's nominated at least. I don't know. I watched a couple of movies too in between. I think I watched that actually before Spider-Verse came out, because I don't know if you guys remember, I posted on my Instagram story, I'm like, what Spider-Verse movie is this? And some people didn't realize it was Andrew Garfield, so like, I don't know what you're talking about, Britney. So I was like, okay.
It's the one that almost includes Turn Off the Dark.
Yes.
I was hoping that
Do you know
we would get Reeve Carney show up in No Way Home as one of the Spider-Men, but
Have you seen the tweet that they're like, well, everyone really liked Andrew Garfield and Tick, Tick, Boom. Everyone really liked Andrew Garfield and Spider-Man and wanted to come back. Why don't they just do a movie version of Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark with Andrew Garfield? And I'm like, you know what? Actually, yes. I would watch that.
Well, like, congrats to you two. The amazing films are getting their flowers now because of No Way Home. And everyone's talking about, like, it's so funny, right? I feel like the two of you are like the only people on the internet who have ever said anything positive about the amazing movies, right? And now all of a sudden it's like the cool thing to do is to like love Andrew Garfield's amazing movies. And I just feel like the whole time,
small but dedicated subgroup.
Well, you know what I mean? Because like that, it used to be the du jour to like just shit on those movies. And
I run into more people who have just never even heard of them. Like a lot of people are like, "Oh, I remember those Maguire movies, and I know the Holland exists now." But there were 2 others, and there was some dude, and he's in this. Yeah, like some people just didn't know they exist.
So now, I mean, there's this push for like an Amazing 3, or for at least making the Venom and Morbius universe exist in the Garfield universe, which is an interesting wrinkle. I don't know that you'd want to, now that the amazing movies are getting their shine, that you want to like sully it with a Jared Leto, but
No, but like I think that I would like to see Andrew Garfield and Tom Hardy work with each other. Like, that would be fun. And I also think his version of Spider-Man would best go along Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool. So I would like to see that. But technically now Deadpool will be in the MCU. So it's just kind of like, you're not going to have Tom Holland. And I mean, they could make it work if they found a way to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know.
Just Garfield versus Deadpool for a whole movie. That would be pretty fun.
Right?
well, yeah. So I mean, Andrew Garfield is having a hell of a year, and I think it's his time to shine. But Tick Tick Boom is great. I love that movie. I wish we could get Lin on the podcast back, because now that I've seen the movie, there's just so much I want to talk to him about, because all the Easter eggs. In fact, I've been contemplating doing a YouTube video about one Tick Tick Boom Easter egg that I might as well just do it now, since I'm too lazy to actually put the video together. But there's a shit ton of Easter eggs if you're like into musicals and into Broadway, especially in the diner scene when they do Sunday.
Yes.
I mean, that's obvious one. But there's one Easter egg that no one's talked about since the movie's been out, and I keep wanting to put it out there. And again, I'm too lazy to actually put the work in. But did you know, Brittany, that Lin performed Tick Tick Boom before Hamilton?
No.
I had heard that. That was very almost produced.
Well, they did it off Broadway. They did it for New York City Center.
Showing.
Yeah, it was like a week only, right? Like 3 performances or whatever. And it was in 2014. Lin played John, and his castmates were Leslie Odom Jr. as Michael and Karen Olivo as Susan. So Tick Tick Boom, the off-Broadway version, is a 3-man play. The original Jonathan Larson production was just a 1-man rock monologue. And the movie kind of like blends both the 3-man, rewritten 2001 after Jonathan Larson died musical version with the Jonathan Larson rock monologue with a traditional biopic, right? Like, that's what's so cool about Tick Tick Boom. It takes like 3 versions of the same story and blends it together. Anyway, the Easter egg is, so Lin played John, Leslie Odom played Michael, and Karen Olivo played Susan. They're the 3 people who sing with, Andrew Garfield. He's got Joshua Henry and Vanessa Hudgens when he's performing. Anyway, there's a long way to get to the Easter egg, which is Joshua Henry was the original Aaron Burr in the Chicago performance of Hamilton, and Vanessa Hudgens played Vanessa in the Heights, which Karen Olivo originated at the Kennedy Center. So like by having Vanessa Hudgens and Josh Henry be the 2 other singers with Andrew Garfield on stage, is he doing a little Easter egg for his own version of Tick Tick Boom with the original Aaron Burr, Leslie Odom, and the original Vanessa from In the Heights, Karen Olivo. Again, this is my Lin-Manuel fan brain was like in overdrive.
I almost followed that thread of deep Hamilton trivia. Not quite.
Not quite. And so, like...
It probably is. I'm sure you're right.
Did you do that on purpose? Or am I the only one who's like picking up on that? Because I haven't seen anyone mention that. So anyway, that's my rant for the... That's my nerd pop.
You know your regional production.
After watching the movie, and I know that Tick Tick Boom was a big part of Lin's like origin story. Like, he saw Tick Tick Boom. He saw Rent as a teenager, and then he saw Tick Tick Boom as a like college student, and that's what kind of inspired him to write In the Heights, like for Broadway. And that's why, he was the perfect person to direct the movie. It's just that, like, when I saw the movie and Josh Henry plays like the male alternate singer, and Vanessa Hudgens plays the female alternate singer when they're doing the stage portions of the show, I just remembered that like Leslie Odom and Karen Olivo were the other 2 people, and it's like, that's a Vanessa and an Aaron Burr. And he cast a Vanessa and Aaron Burr for the movie, and that's got to be intentional. He wouldn't do that unintentionally. The only other thing I would say is for the Tick Tick Boom Blu-ray release, when Criterion Collection puts it out, they need to put the pro shot version of Tick Tick Boom that they performed on the DVD, because there's only clips of it on YouTube where you can see them performing, but I would like to see the whole show on Blu-ray. So Lin, if you're listening, let's get the New York City Center performance of Tick Tick Boom that you 3 did on the Blu-ray. Anyway,
or were we going to talk about that other show that has a musical in it, kind of?
All the listeners who have tuned out, you can come back now, because we can get into some of the Disney Plus stuff. Speaking of musicals, right? Because we'll start at the end of the finale of Hawkeye. So much of the internet lost their shit when the mid-credit sequence was Rogers the Musical. And I, for one, as the Broadway, musical theater kid in an adult body, I loved it. I was like happy. And I was actually surprised so many people were like pissed off about it.
I loved it, but I thought there was going to be like another teaser besides that. So I think because that was the only one, I was like, hey. Like, I would have watched that anyways just because I love Adam Pascal. But it was just like you're not going to hint towards anything else? Oh, okay. Like, that's how it felt. Like, it was just like and I like musicals, so I'm not against that being one of, I just thought there was going to be another one. That was my only, like, disappointment with it. My little brother was very mad. He was like, oh.
I mean, so much of the internet was mad that they just gave us this stupid musical. Which, the funny thing is, from the first episode, people were saying, oh, I hope they release the whole musical. And they did, and people were mad. Like, it just proves you can't please everybody.
I think also it's like there were some people, too, who would say, like, I'm tired of them always teasing the next project. And then they didn't tease the next project, and now people are like, where's the next project?
Exactly. They
did it at the end of Spider-Man. They gave you a whole ass trailer.
I know, right? Yeah, exactly.
But no, I was a little like, okay.
That's it?
Yeah, but I still enjoyed, like, the scene. Like, I'm not gonna, like, lie. I definitely enjoyed the whole scene.
I mean, honestly, the biggest surprise of the musical sequence at the end of Hawkeye was I didn't realize that, like, the Avengers themselves did not perform any of the song. like when listening to it on iTunes, I thought, oh, that must be Captain America singing the entire... No, it's like some random white dude just singing...
No, it's Adam Pascal singing the whole time.
Yeah, it's like, well, but he's just playing some random, like, doctor or something. Like, who is he even supposed to be?
Yeah, I don't know, but I guess they went, well, like, look, we gotta get, the big guns from Broadway, so...
It's just like, well, whatever. Anyway, how did you feel of the ending of Hawkeye? Like, we finally got to see Wilson Fisk in action. When we last left the podcast, Kingpin was revealed, but we didn't actually get to see him really perform.
Which I didn't realize this was a reference to an actual Spider-Man comic. The Hawaiian shirt is actually a reference to a legit Spider-Man comic, and people have been hoping that he's gonna be, like, the next villain for the next Spider-Man movie. So maybe that's gonna happen. But yeah, the outfit, I died laughing. I thought it was a hilarious outfit. But no, I liked it. I just want to know what's next. I hate that. I hate to be that person of, like, what's next when... But I think that it is it is my second favorite of the shows. I think Loki. Loki's the strongest for me, like, all the way through. I just think every single episode I loved of Loki. Hawkeye it's right up there. But yeah, I feel like it needed a little... I don't know what else it needed in the finale, but it needed, like, maybe a little something else. I don't know what, but...
I know, because I'm not in the Loki list crew. I will say Hawkeye is my favorite of the Marvel episodic series that came out this year. I think it was really well directed, and it really pulled off that whole Christmas pseudo die-hard vibe with just people with arrows and not being so frickin' cosmic all over the place. I thought it was really wonderfully contained, and in that sense I like that it seemed to end on a full stop, or at least the full stop of, Christmas wins in the end. This is fine.
I also love that, and for anyone who's concerned, we're going to spoil everything else that we're watching over the holidays. So if you haven't finished Hawkeye, if you haven't watched Book of Boba Fett, Matrix Resurrections, Ghostbusters Afterlife, all the stuff that we may or may not talk about, just know that there will be spoilers and that's your warning. But back to the end of Hawkeye, I think what I really appreciated about it, and to your point, Brittany, about where's it going to go, I mean, I think it definitely... Now I understand why there's going to be an Echo series. I think before Hawkeye came out, I was like, why is Echo getting their own show? Like, we don't know anything about that character. And now the show ends with Echo shooting Kingpin. Yes, we don't see it on screen.
It's a big deal.
We don't see it on screen, but in the comics, I saw a panel where it's like it just messes up his eye.
He's blinded. Right, exactly.
Yeah, but it doesn't kill him. So for people who were disappointed and upset about that, because I was for a second until I saw the panel, I was like, oh, all right. And I also thought, I'm like, he's not really dead. There's no way they would, like, bring him back just for this. Just and Charlie, too.
Yeah. And also do it off screen, right? Because that was the biggest clue that they're not going to kill off Kingpin off screen.
So... Yeah, so I mean, he's definitely coming back for anyone who got upset. And I mean, because again, they're not going to introduce both him and Charlie back into the MCU and then like kill one of them off like that fast. Like, they're not going to do that.
So does Kingpin get an eye patch for a while to make him even more
looks
threatening than he already is?
Yeah,
It
he
looks
was
like
he was
did.
blinded in both eyes in the comics after, I think, and Echo's the reason in the comics too, that she shoots him in the face or something and doesn't.
Yeah, it's
doesn't
like an
kill him.
acid or like a chemical thing or something. Yeah.
Dominic, as the resident Daredevil stan, what did you think of D'Onofrio's portrayal of Kingpin here versus the Kingpin of Daredevil seasons 1 through 3?
Well, it's interesting because, you know, I'm of the opinion that Kingpin's performance in that first Daredevil is like one of the best pure villain performances in all the Marvel stuff. I mean, Netflix had some great villains, you know, let's include Purple Man in there too. But, you know, D'Onofrio as Kingpin is just sublime. And it's funny, like, from the very instant he's introduced with the Hawaiian shirt and stuff, you can sort of tell there's a little Disneyfication. You can sort of sense the difference in texture between the Disney and Netflix vibes. You know, he's not going to go completely vicious. I mean, he was just viscerally
Right, he's not going to like
threatening.
He's not going to slam Kate's head into a car door for 20
Yeah,
minutes.
and shit like that. But then there's one scene early on where he just turns it on. He turns on that familiar voice, that kind of like, you know, petulant child in a 600-pound muscled man's body, which is the threatening part. And you could tell, you know, he was so he found a way to recapture that magic. I really hope, you know, if Kingpin survives, he meets up in rehab with Bullseye again with his surgically reconstructed spine, because, man, that Bullseye was another
cover.
excellent villain. Oh, okay, you got
it.
it there. Oh, you know, I've seen that cover. I haven't read that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not just like a Disney, like, making him look stupid.
All right, no, I was because it's like Pirates of the Caribbean. No, I didn't mean that sense. I just meant in the whole, you know, what's allowable as far as, you know, adult / nasty content in Netflix as opposed to Disney. But anything that harkens back to that Daredevil series, you know, I was happy to see Charlie Cox again, and then, you know, Kingpin again in the same week. Mm-hmm. Good shit. But yeah, bring back that Bullseye guy, because he was a great villain also, and the dangling thread from that Daredevil season 3.
Like, I just recently finished season 3, like I talked about. I didn't want it to end, even though it ended, and I was like pushing it off for so long. And when, you know, I saw Vincent show up on what was that, episode 2 or 3, where he just like, you just hear his chuckle. I'm like, God damn it, I gotta go and finish it. So it's nice, and I know that it is the same characters, because I know he talked about it in an interview with, I don't know who he did the interview with. I don't know if it was with Comic Book Online or someone, but he did say that the writers and directors and everyone told him to treat it as the same exact Kingpin he played on the Netflix show. So it is a continuation, I guess. I don't know if he got snapped or what, so we'll eventually find out what happened to Matt and all them in between. And I know that's why Jessica Henwick turned down being in Shang-Chi, was because she apparently knew that Matt was coming back as Daredevil, and she didn't want to miss the opportunity to be Colleen again. So
Well, I read something along the lines that, like, she knew that, like, accepting the role, and it was going to be the role of Xialing. She was approached to play, that if she accepted that she would have to, like, no longer be Iron Fist, because she's the Iron Fist. We know for a fact Colleen Wing is the Iron Fist.
The only thing is, from what I've heard, is Kevin Feige is picking and choosing from the various shows of what is going to be canon and what isn't. So Daredevil may be canon, but Iron Fist may not be. Just because, I mean, the only reason why is because I know Marvel is actively working to release themselves from Danny Rand because of that show, as we all know with all the announcements of the Iron Fist comics. So we might not, unfortunately, even see her come back as Colleen, just because of how much they don't even want to have Finn Jones of that character.
Finn Jones stink.
Yeah, like, that's really, it's just so, it's frustrating because it kind of ruins it for, like, you know, some of the other people on the show who are actually really good.
Speaking of Colleen Wing, speaking of Jessica Henwick, we're gonna dive out of the Disney Plus stuff before we come back to it a little bit later. You know, I mentioned the other thing that I saw over the holiday was Matrix Resurrections, and we didn't get a chance to talk about that on the show because it came out during the hiatus. And I know that, Brittany, you haven't watched it yet, and Dominic, you've watched most of it, but
I saw most of it. I might Never-Ending Story of it. So, which, I mean, I when I was a kid, I had the Never-Ending Story book, and I kept starting it and never finishing it too. So to me, it was a literal never-ending story.
And it's not because you don't like it. You just don't want the show to end, just like Britney didn't want Daredevil to end.
Yeah, there's that also sense of how it can end. But let's talk about it.
Well, but Jessica Henwick, she was given a choice, right? And both projects, she had to choose which one she wanted to audition for, right? So it was like, you can either do this Marvel movie or you can do The Matrix. You have to pick, and you can't like do one and then maybe do the other, or do one and think about it and then do the. It's like you have to decide now. Do you want to do MCU or do you want to do Matrix? And she chose The Matrix. I think those things you talked about, like with the Colleen Wing of it all and everything, but she ended up choosing The Matrix, and she's, in my mind, other than Keanu, the best part of The Matrix Resurrection.
That's what I've heard from a lot of people.
Yeah, she's spectacular. And what a good franchise for the half Asians of the world, really, The Matrix is. I mean, Keanu Reeves got like so many people hooked The Matrix, and Jessica Henwick continuing that thread. It's great. Yeah,
no, I mean, and she's clearly the like the audience's, entry into this film. She's not just like a side character in The Matrix Resurrection. She's like the main person whose mission it is to bring back Trinity and Neo, right? She's almost the Morpheus of Matrix Resurrections, because she's the one who's like believes above all else that Neo is the one. So knowing that, Brittany, you haven't seen it yet, Dominic, you haven't finished it yet, I'll try not to do any.
I've already heard some spoilers.
Yeah.
So like I know that Yaya is playing a Morpheus code and not actually it's not a recasting of...
Well, and it's interesting too about...
He's like a fancy robot.
Yeah. But what's cool about Yaya too, if you think about it, like he's kind of building a career or a resume of these types of films or these types of projects where he's like taking on an iconic role. You know what I'm saying? Like Candyman, Dr. Manhattan, but then kind of like reinterpreting it for like... That's such a wild kind of typecast to be in. Like, what is an iconic, genre character that you can re-embody in your own way? Yeah. And that's kind of a cool thing to be.
And he could have played it very Dr. Manhattan-y if he was being Morpheus, like just saying things in a very sort of distanced, like all-powerful sort of way. But I like that he chose to play Morpheus like a little jazzier and fun and like kind of like stoned on something or something, just like a little less, gravitas.
Well, because he's not doing a Lawrence Fishburne impression, right? Like that's what's kind of cool about it. And same thing with Jonathan Groff. Like it's interesting that, again, spoiler, turns out Jonathan Groff is playing Agent Smith, or a version of Agent Smith. But again, he's imbuing it with more personality, with a little bit more camp. And I think that's what a lot of like Matrix fans don't like about this movie. Some of the reviews, some of the reaction to it is that it's really bad, and it's not, and I think part of that is unintentional. I think Lana Wachowski is making a commentary on Matrix fandom. It's particularly like how Matrix fandom has like split in ways, and the mythology and the movies have been kind of like misinterpreted. There's a whole scene in the beginning where, so the biggest like meta premise of Matrix Resurrections is that the events of the Matrix films exist in that universe. It's a video game instead of a movie, which is kind of weird. It was like, that was a weird thing to wrap my head around. Like, why can't they just say it was a series of movies? But it's the Matrix trilogy exists as a video game franchise, so it has the same kind of like legacy within the world that it does in the real world. So there's a whole montage of people like talking about like, and so like, Keanu's character Thomas Anderson is forced to kind of like revisit the Matrix franchise. There's this whole meta commentary between
which
Groff
kids
and
played
Keanu.
for a while, and it was the biggest thing in the world, and then they moved on, and now they wanted to see.
And now Warner Brothers is forcing us to do a sequel.
Right. And they managed to, and they get to comment on sequels themselves, which is hilarious in many ways.
Yeah. Because like I think Matrix definitely fits into this like recent genre of what they call legacy sequels, where like you take a property that's been dormant for like 20 to 30 years and revisit it, bringing back some of the original actors, but also imbuing like a new, younger, more diverse cast to kind of like take it into the future. But you also kind of like have to redo the first movie again. Like Force Awakens was accused of this. Ghostbusters Afterlife is very much a legacy sequel that just kind of plays the hits of the first Ghostbusters movie. And then, you know, what I love about Resurrections is that it's also in that vein where it's like, okay, we're going to bring back Carrie Ann, Jada Pinkett, and Keanu, but we're also going to bring in Jessica Henwick and Yahya Abdul-Mateen, these like newer stars, younger stars, to kind of like, if they were to be a Resurrection sequel, they can carry it forward, which I don't think this movie sets up a sequel. I think this movie is very much like self-contained. Lana Wachowski is like, I said what I had to say about The Matrix and then I can move on. But what you've seen of it, Dominic, what have you latched onto with when it comes to The Matrix?
Yeah, well, they took stuff from the original in a good way, in that it's still directed and composed with great directorial flair. This is not true of all the sequels. In this case, they keep like the color palettes and this sort of great urban decay feeling in these beautiful long shots, and because a lot of times they're matching shots from the original in a, you know, flashback montagey way. So in a way they're doing that shot for shot remake, which was fine because that was not broke, so don't fix it.
But it's also like a commentary on it too, because like there are some subtle differences in the original Matrix. Like the urban landscape is this nondescript anonymous city, whereas in this movie, it's very much San Francisco.
Oh yeah,
you know, and then the real like the world of the Matrix is different because, you know, in a way, it's a commentary on like where the internet is in 2020 versus where the internet was in 1999, right? So like, you know, the main villain, I won't reveal who the villain is, but the main villain says that like, you know, it's essentially saying like social media is what fuels the internet now, like outrage and emotion, not like, and so like the Matrix is more like mirrors the real world than like the coldness of like the Matrix of the 90s, right? Where like internets were just databases. Now internets is like outrage and and shit posting, and that's kind of like is reflected in the new version of the Matrix.
And it's cool. So they get to examine how internet culture has completely overwhelmed, destroyed their lives, even more than they were predicting at the time. And again, this goes to sort of like how, you know, I'm in the school of like sequels 2 and 3 weren't as good as that original Matrix, because I mean at that time, like when Matrix 2 and 3 were coming out, the internet was like exploding. We didn't really know what was going to happen. So in a way, Matrix had fallen behind, you know, the innovations that had already started with the first one. But now, with the benefit of time, it gets to look back, it's like, wow, yeah, that we were part of that, and that blew up in a way that we couldn't even imagine. And I get to examine in that kind of tongue-in-cheek way. And also, like, I like that there is a love story at the core of it. Yeah. And, you know, in the original trilogy, like, you know, it feels a little pat to me. It was like, yes, Keanu and Carrie Ann Moss, and they're both hot in leather. It's a little pat that there is this love story, but I like that they revisit it when they're both older. And especially when you were saying about San Francisco, that reminded me, like, you know, the version of Trinity that shows up in this Resurrections. I mean, very much a San Francisco kind of trope. Like, they're like white lady who has kids, but maybe wasn't ever like really gung-ho into having kids, but it's kind of like a, you know, older mom, but is really into motorcycles, and they meet, and they're, you know, they're bored. Yeah, there's electricity, and they're bored, and they're struggling with their own lives in the way that older people are, who have slightly grown out of, you know, internet youth culture. And there is something very affecting about that.
I mean, and maybe because we're much older watching Resurrections, you know, we've kind of aged with the characters. Because there was something affecting of, like, I'm glad, like, they made the decision that Thomas Anderson of this movie is a successful game developer, right? Like, and yet he still has this ennui. He still has this, like, sadness to him. Yeah. Right? Like, he still feels like he doesn't belong. That this is not his life. Like, he's basically Cypher from the first movie. He's been replugged into the Matrix. Like, he's forgotten about his old life. Right? That's what Cypher wanted. I just want to eat this steak. There's even a scene of Keanu eating the steak in a very Joey Pantalone way. And yet there's no happiness there, right? Like, that's what's really fascinating about this kind of like commentary on where we are. And you know, and it's not lost, you know, it's old hat now to say that Matrix.
That much is like, you've got everything, you got a great life. But there's
something else that's missing.
But what is this life, right?
Right.
That we
what is my beautiful house?
Penthouses, yeah, that kind of thing.
They reference the Jefferson Starship song, but the Talking Heads song is also relevant to it.
Very much so. I want to say one other thing about the Matrix Resurrections, because I haven't talked to you in a while, Keith. It is the first in-universe Warner Brothers reference that I've really enjoyed. And no offense, Space Jam and Ready Player One and all that, but the fact that Jessica Henwick's character is named Bugs,
Yeah, like the
slash
bunny.
White Rabbit or whatever, basically being a Bugs Bunny type role.
Oh yeah.
You know,
I mean, she literally has a
trickster
line
in
that
this
says,
universe.
"What's up, Doc?"
Yeah, and she does that, and that's great.
In a very
And-
like straight, sincere way too, though. That's
Yeah.
there's no.
And it made me
cheekiness.
remember, like, we talk all the time about the Marvel DC dichotomy, but at one time there was really, Disney versus Warner Brothers cartoons dichotomy.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like Disney was like, floofy kid stuff, and the Warner Brothers cartoons were kind of funny
And edgy.
but people's heads exploded.
Yeah.
Yeah, and edgy. So Warner Brothers, it's ironic, very ironic, and that Disney ends up controlling Marvel, because Marvel DC were reversed. Marvel was like, grounded, transposed reality, and DC was
and more edgy, right? Because
yeah.
Marvel was like the mutants and ground level crime and all that kind of stuff, and DC was more
Yes,
detached.
it was like
you know,
idealistic,
Yeah.
fancy kind of stuff, and so that got switched. But Warner Brothers controlling that wisecracking Bugs Bunny voice, which is one of their strongest voices in their whole universe.
Yeah.
I think that was sly. So
I'm glad you brought up Space Jam, because that's also in the genre of legacy sequels that are just beat for beat remakes of the originals, and successful in various ways. Well, let's take a break and come back on the other side and jump back in. We're just going back and forth, Warner Brothers, Disney, and jump back in the Disney pool, because we got some Star Wars to talk about. We haven't had Star Wars to talk about in a long time on this podcast. So let's take a break and come back with the Book of Boba Fett.
Cheers to the new year and to making resolutions you actually keep. Have you added self-care to your routine? Our sponsors at Manscaped have the perfect tools to keep you and your significant other clean and tidy this year. Manscaped tools for Hez Jewels are so good, you'll want them for yourself. Set your first New Year's resolution with good intentions and join the 4 million people worldwide who trust Manscaped. With our exclusive offer, go to manscaped.com and use the code HARDNOC, Hard NOC, for 20% off plus free shipping.
How many Manscaped products did you give out for the holidays?
several. Manscaped is focused on below the waist grooming, which not just below men's waists. They're specifically, you can also work on your bikini line here. And if anyone's worried about, like, if you like balls is a funny subject to talk about of your gift opening gathering, it's a delightful conversation starter, because it's just a funny word and balls are real. But also, it's also for all below the waists.
Exactly. What's cool about Manscaped is they have so many other things other than just ball shavers, right? Like, you can get nose hair trimmers, which is called the Weed Whacker. You have body wash. I've been using the body wash and the shampoo conditioner for a while now, and it's great. It smells absolutely amazing. The ultra premium body wash is made up of aloe vera and sea salt, and it like not only smells great, it feels great when you shower with it. Again, if you have some issues buying ball shavers, Manscaped has a whole suite of products that is good for all genders and all body types. So if you want to get some for yourself, whether your resolution is to work out more or travel to new places, be sure to travel to manscaped.com for the exclusive offer of 20% off and free shipping with the code HARDNOC. That's HARDNOC. Again, you'll get 20% off your order and free shipping. Cheers to self-care in 2022. We're back. You know who else is back? Boba fucking Fett is back.
Yes, Robert A. Fettuccine. You haven't seen those tweets going
Great.
around?
He is...
That's
I'm
his
surprised.
favorite food, right?
I'm surprised no one has proposed an encyclopedia of boba tea called the Book of Boba Tea.
Oh, that's a good one.
Why is that not?
Another of those funny coincidences with East Asian words and Star Wars naming. It's like they're everywhere.
Well, but the cool thing about this particular property is that you, for the first time, have two AAPI leads on the show, Ming-Na Wen and Tamira Morrison. In fact, shout out to Lauren Lola, who just got an interview with both Tamira and Ming-Na and talked about how cool it was to have a Star Wars property starring
on the Nerds of Color blog.
on
and
our
YouTube
blog, on our
channel.
YouTube channel. So please check that out. So yeah, what are your impressions of the first two episodes of the Book of Boba Fett?
Fucking fire.
Yeah?
Excuse my language, but
No, that's why we have the big E on our podcast.
The first episode
Fucking
was
flamethrower on the wrist.
The first episode was really good. I was sad that it was so short, but it was so good. And then episode 2, man, Jon Favreau is in his writing bag, because that is just one of the best episodes of Star Wars anything, because it was just so good. And I wonder how much of it was like, you know, Tamora being like, well, we need to, like, you know, do this for the indigenous people, and like, because it very much felt like an indigenous rights episode.
Absolutely.
And the humanizing of the Tusken Raiders in the first 2 episodes, especially as we see in episode 2, is just done so well. And I really liked it. And I just, like, you know, if Jon Favreau really listened to Tamora, like, he really did listen and did his thing, as like, you know, it helped him in his own writing, because it was just beautiful, like what they were able to do with this episode 2. I just think it was so good. Like, I don't know, I love it. I just thought everything about it was just A+ to me.
Mm-hmm. I have to admit, after the first episode, I was a little kind of, I don't know if I'm feeling Boba Fett, because it just felt like an incomplete episode. Like, I didn't know what it was trying to say, other than setting up the structure of, you know, post-Mandalorian stuff in Mos Espa trying to become a crime lord, with flashbacks to like how he escaped the Sarlacc. Like, I didn't realize how much I kind of had an idea it would be a lot of Tusken stuff, because just the way he looks when he shows up in the Mandalorian, where he's got the gaffy stick. But you don't necessarily know that he's a Tusken Raider when he shows up in the Mandalorian, right? So this kind of fleshes that out. But that first episode, I was a little like, it felt slow. I was a little bored, I have to admit. Second episode, holy fuck. Like, second half of the second episode. Like, honestly, no shade to Ming-Na and Fennec Shan. She's a great character. I don't need the current modern stuff. Just give me the, how did Boba survive in Tatooine for the last however many years? Because, like, that to me is more interesting than the crime lord stuff. Like, to me, I'm still not that, you know, interested in the whole, you know, war with the Hutts or the mayor. Although, like, Black Chrysanthemum shows up, and that's pretty cool if you read the comics. The Black Wookiee.
Wait, who is Black Chrysanthemum?
It's Chrysanthemum. I was just making a joke saying Chrysanthemum. He's that black-haired Wookiee who shows up, and you're like,
yeah.
Some people are like, who the fuck is that? And other people are like, holy shit, because they read comics.
Yeah, and my mom said evil Chewbacca.
Yeah, the evil Chewbacca. So, but I'm a little less. I'm less interested in that, and more interested in the Tusken stuff, because that train sequence was some of the best Star Wars.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even really know what's going on in Book of Boba Fett, because I'm watching it more kind of like things. I don't quite have like my mind around the plot of it. But yeah, it was a really good episode for those of us who always had a sand people fetish. I mean, fetish is a strong word. Very strong interest in the sand people of Star Wars and wondering where they come from and what's their culture like. I mean, I know their whole culture is written up in a book somewhere in one of the novelizations. I haven't read it. But, you know, to see it.
As is everything in Star Wars, right? Like, there's something somewhere.
But to just get it in this show, and, like, you know, they're looking fly and they're different kinds of robes, and, like, you know, I was sort of wondering, like, do they reproduce, or are they ambisexual or whatever? Not all those questions were answered, but it was beautiful to be embedded in the Sand People's journey there. And I agree with you, it was a big ramp up from the first episode, which had some question areas.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. Like after, I'm glad we didn't do a weekly podcast, because I feel like had we done a podcast when episode 1 come out, I might not have been as glowing in my appreciation of the show. Honestly, I have to say, full disclosure, I fell asleep 3 times. I had to keep waking up and rewinding it, and then kept falling asleep. So like that could be part of why I was not so thrilled with the first episode. But that second.
There's that awkward fight where basically the Night Vipers from G.I. Joe show up and surround them, or the Cyber Vipers or whatever. I don't know, this is another thought I had that reminded me of Yuki. It's like, I think it occurred to me that the aesthetic of Boba Fett is the closest to G.I. Joe in the Star Wars universe. I mean, he's got like all the weird weapons and the rocket launcher and the mask that you don't really know he sees.
But the action sequence was a little right? Like, what it descended to like parkour for 20 minutes of like Ming-Na chasing those assassins around, and I don't know, I was just not feeling it. But second episode, yes, very much the whole Tusken Raider kind of accepting him into their tribe, the whole Vision quest was really cool. I do think that, like, structurally the show's still weird, like, because it's like it was 2 shows. It was like the flashback. It doesn't cut in back and forth like Arrow or something. It's just like, here's part of the show. This is what's happening in the present tense, and then cut. And here's everything that happened, 5 years ago. So it's like,
that's what Lost did. Lost is
but
like
they
my
went back
favorite
and
show.
forth still. They still would go back and forth. Like this was very much like the first 25 minutes was all the daimyo stuff, and then the second 25 minutes was all the Tuscan stuff. And it's like, I mean, which is cool. Like I could have, if you just give me the Tuscan stuff, and that's all I need. I don't really even need the taking over the crime families.
Aren't they going for the Godfather model? Do you think that's what they're
Maybe
trying to do? Because that's, again, how Godfather is structured. It's the crime lords taking over in the present, and there are a bunch of flashbacks back to early childhood.
The Godfather
whole
2,
family
right? Yeah.
I mean, actually, both of them. Yeah, much more in the Godfather 2.
Right, like because Robert De Niro,
yes, much more strongly in Godfather.
is like
2.
a separate. It's in a separate movie from Al Pacino.
Yeah, the how we got here.
Yeah, which is possible.
That's
Which
what I was thinking about.
the present stuff in the Godfather is very fascinating to me. I still haven't been hooked by the present story in Boba Fett. Like the mayor and his, spokesperson, the Twilight spokesperson. Like, I don't know. I don't care about them. I don't. The Hutts were. It was cool to see Hutts on like a giant platform being carried around. That was fun. But
now they keep calling it a litter. They make a big deal of how the Hutts are carried around on a litter. Is that like I don't know? Is that a Earth English name for it? It just made me think of kitty litter, which is kind of
I think that's
gross but appropriate image.
I think that's what it is called in general, like your litter.
Yeah, so they can just poop in it, right? As the Hutts are being traveled around.
I definitely think I think Fennec Shand says something to the effect of like, it's proof of your power that you can like force these people to carry you around, and particularly if you're Hutts, these giant sand slugs, then people have to carry around. Shouts to Favreau and Filoni and Robert Rodriguez, who is one of the creative minds behind this iteration of live action Star Wars. But it almost feels like Lucasfilm is kind of abandoning movies and let's just do Disney Plus series because we're killing it here.
But then I don't know, like some of the fan base that they were trying to cater to with the Rise of Skywalker fucking doesn't like Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah. Well, the sequel stuff, like, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, you definitely have a fan base that's dedicated to like the Finn and Rey and Kylo story, but I almost feel like they're kind of ignoring them from now on and just focusing on this like period, Mandalorian, Boba Fett.
Yeah, but even like the people, that's what I'm saying, that like now the people that they've been trying to cater to, they don't even like Book of Boba Fett. I've seen them complain about it when I'm like, I've pretty much have liked almost every era of Star Wars, except for Solo. I hate that movie. I can die in a fiery pit. But
Solo
like,
kind of stinks.
I like every version of Star Wars, so for me, I don't know, I'm enjoying this. I'm excited for Kenobi, even though that's not out yet. It's just they had that Hayden do that PSA thingy recently. I don't know if you've seen it, and it ends with him saying, "May the Force be with you," and I just like cried, and I was like, "Oh, Hayden, I love you."
Well, they're definitely sticking to the original trilogy timeline because that Kenobi's coming up next. There's the Cassian Andor show that's coming up after that. So like, I think they found the sweet spot as far as the era of Star Wars that's most appealing to like the broadest range. And what I hope they continue to do is this is why I was a little disappointed, honestly, by Luke showing up in Mandalorian. Is that what was cool about Mandalorian is that it was carving out its own space in the universe, and by like bringing a Skywalker in, it just felt a little like, like why does it?
The fact
why
that
does
they
it have
didn't
to
even
like
use
tie back to
Sebastian
that?
Stan was just stupid on their
Well,
part.
and it didn't help that he was like CG Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, they could have just used Sebastian Stan, and then I'm sure they could have had Mark Hamill do a voiceover, and it would have worked just fine.
Do people say that because Winter Soldier got his hand cut off and so did Luke? Or
No,
because they
Have you
actually
seen
like
Sebastian Stan with like
I'm sure
the
it's great. I
Photoshop?
was just
He looks
making
just
a
like
joke.
him. Yeah.
Have you
Well,
seen
tell you
the
what, he
Photoshop
looks more like
with
Luke
blonde hair?
Skywalker than he does Tommy Lee. That's a weird casting.
But can we? But
interesting
speaking
segue.
of that
But good
project,
concept,
I know
yes.
this is so off, but because you mentioned that project, oh my God, what's her name? Looks so much like Pamela.
Yeah,
Anderson.
Lily James.
It's
Like,
freaking
that's
crazy.
amazing.
She
I
doesn't
cannot
look
believe that that's
anything like
Cinderella
No,
as Pamela Anderson. But
Yeah.
like, it's clearly like they did a much better job turning her into Pam Anderson than Sebastian Stan into Tommy Lee. Because like,
But
You don't
I'm
look
gonna
anything like
watch
Tommy.
that because it's gonna be fun.
Was the comic version of Pamela Anderson not called Stripperella at some point? And very badly
She did do
advised
Stripperella with,
sort of Marvel.
I think so. She did that with Stan Lee. They created that character together.
Not,
She wasn't a Marvel
like
character.
A
That was when Stan Lee was doing his own stuff.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's making weird segues. Now.
Yeah.
But
No, it's
I'm
okay.
glad you guys brought that up about the audience for Book of Boba Fett, because I was wondering out loud if the Mandalorian and Boba Fett wing are mainly throwback pleasures. Throwback pleasures,
They're supposed
sort
to
of
be.
catering to people who didn't get that much out of the sequel trilogy, Rise of Skywalker, and all that.
Yeah.
They're kind of
Well,
leaning into those things
I
again.
hated Rise of Skywalker. No, I didn't hate
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
but
That was terrible.
I can
Yeah,
rewatch
okay.
that more than I will ever rewatch Solo. That's how much I don't like Solo. Like, I refuse to watch that movie again. But I don't know. I think my favorite era now of Star Wars is honestly the High Republic books. I'm still reading the second one, The Rising Storm, but I just really love this era because it's before the Skywalkers are even a thing. But Yoda is there, so there is some ties.
I mean, that's cool, right? Like, you can have some ties. But again, like Mandalorian, what was so exciting about it was like, it was that sweet spot of like just enough nostalgia to kind of satiate people, but telling a new story in a new part of the universe that's not connected to. That was what was exciting about Rey and Finn and everybody, right? Like they were these new characters that could take Star Wars in a new direction, and then they just kept circling back to like shit people knew. This ties into what I was saying about Ghostbusters and even Matrix, right? Like that place now where most genre stuff is legacy stuff, trying to like revisit things who have already seen. Even the Batman, like there are a bunch of trailers have come out since our last podcast. This is I'm excited. I still can't wait to watch it, but like I do get some sense that like, is this movie treading water, or is it taking the Batman story into any new direction?
I
You know
feel
what I
like
mean?
it's going to be its standalone thing because I don't think he's going to be in the Flash movie, but Keaton is. So, like, Keaton is going to now be have always been the respective Batman. For...
Yeah, because they cast, he's in the Batgirl movie, which is wild.
Yeah,
right?
so, like, they're basically going to rewrite out Ben Affleck. I'm so mad that they're also going to be rewriting out Henry Cavill as Superman because...
Yeah, well,
I feel like
they're
he,
kind of like
like,
a 2-for-1. Yeah,
I feel like
know.
he, like,
He
Andrew
never got-
Garfield... was the same thing, like both perfectly cast in their roles, had so much potential, but unfortunately got put in stuff that like didn't meet the vision or people couldn't see it. But I feel like Andrew got the better movies opposed to
Well, but
Henry,
speaking of that Flash
but-
film, like, and there's been some, talk around like what that movie's actually going to do. Like Ben Affleck has said, like, his favorite Batman scenes he's shot is in The Flash, but there's also the contingency of fans who are like pissed off that the Snyderverse is going away with this movie. All that said, like, I do think that, in a pre-No Way Home world, the Flashpoint movie was like, and we talked about this on the last podcast, like, was going to like break new ground, but now it's going to feel like a retread
Harsh comparison
of No Way Home in the sense, but, it's all good. It's fine.
It is. Can I say one more thing about Book of Boba Fett?
Yes,
Yes.
please.
Well, it's on my mind. Speaking to how you recapture the joys of the old thing without, compromising potential for a new thing. I really think this secret element is Tatooine. I mean, Tatooine, I would argue, is the best planet and culture in the Star Wars universe. So to keep coming back to it keeps giving you new opportunities. And the reason I say that is like, the original Star Wars movie, what was so wonderful about Tatooine, but besides the way the sand and the landscapes and the sun looks, is like we get to that cantina and it's like everything all at once. It's like all the alien cultures are there. Not just like one alien goes with this environment. It's like a place where people are meeting and like freaking, oh, you want like 3 new alien races? Here's 12, and they all have a story that we're going to wonder about for years. So there's something rich about returning to the place from which the most stories can arise, like Los Angeles.
Just to jump off that point a little bit more too, what's also cool about the way they're approaching Tatooine, even the Star Wars original trilogy sequels suffer from this. Like, Tatooine feels like a planet where there's multiple cultures, to your point. Whereas, like, every planet since has just been like, this is the forest planet where everything's a forest and it's all Ewoks. Here's the ice planet where it's all, yeah, exactly. And what's cool about Tatooine, to your point, is that, like, and what they're doing so well in Boba Fett is showing, like, the different factions of people. Like, even the Tuskens who take in Boba are different Tuskens from Tuskens we've seen before. Like, they dress differently. He even talks about, like, you know, that's not our tribe. We're a different tribe of Tuskens versus like some of the ones we may have seen in previous iterations of Star Wars, like the ones who kidnapped Shmi Skywalker, which is, to your point, Brittany, like also an evolution of like the Tuskens in the 70s and in the original trilogy and even the prequels was very much the other, kind of like the way natives were always depicted, these savages who don't have any personality, don't have any interiority. And what's cool, they started in The Mandalorian. There was a scene where like Din Djarin was like speaking sign language to the Tuskens, and they're exploring further in Boba, is that not only do they have interiority, they have their own cultures, they have their own language, they have their own.
Oh, and finding out that Tatooine had water.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Deep.
So now it's like, you know, and
like
some people are,
now
some people are wondering if his storyline is to actually bring water back to Tatooine, if that's like that's going to be.
And it makes sense, right? Because what is the number one, you know, industry on Tatooine? It's moisture farming.
Yeah.
Right? They're trying to like suck what moisture that's remaining. And so like I think like the way I hope Boba Fett blends their present day storyline with the Tusken storyline is that the reason Boba wants to take over the crime families is to give Tatooine back to the Tuskens.
Yeah.
Much like the plot of Dune.
Yeah, exactly.
No, and then when he said Dune Sea, I was like,
That's what. Well, Lucas was. He's been clear that like he was inspired by Frank Herbert. Like, I mean, I think.
That's what I was wondering.
Star Wars is dumbed down Dune. Let's just be real clear. It's Dune without the royal family politics.
Yeah.
And to its credit.
There's family politics.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, not the multiple royal houses fighting each other. Just this one god family. But yeah.
Yeah, no. But I would just say if you do like Star Wars and actually do want a different era besides, you know, what we've seen in live action, just check out the High Republic books.
Yeah, definitely.
It's 200 years before The Phantom Menace, and you're kind of introduced to, like, Jedis that are different. Like, this one that I really like, his name is Ezler Mann. He very much makes it clear that he, you know, has sexual desires and, like, isn't afraid to, like, explore. Not that that's the only, like, winning factor of, like, reading the book, but, like...
We've wondered about that for Jedi all the time.
But, yeah, they talk about it like it's I don't know, it's just also, it's supposed to be when the Jedi were, like... what we're told they are, like these prestige knights who help, you know, and save when they're supposed to, and they're not just like political pawns or, you know, whatever that they end up turning into in the course of like the Skywalker saga. So like it's very nice to see them be these great people trying to go against these group of pirates called the Nile, who literally annihilate everything in their path. So it's really cool to see the Jedi going up against that, and there's like lots of different side stories, and it's really fun. And they have like a diverse group of writers, like Daniel Jose Older.
Yeah,
he's one of the writers. I haven't read his book yet, but I have it's like Crash Point Tower, Justina Ireland. So like there's some pretty cool people, and I know they have some. You can pre-order their 2 new books too, which I just did today, even though I have 20 million books to read.
Well, other than the High Republic, what else is nerd popping for you? I know there's a show debuting this week that you have some ties to.
Yeah, I'm excited for Naomi to drop. I'll be at work when it actually premieres.
A little birdie told me you've seen the pilot already.
Yes, I have seen the pilot. Thank you, CW. It's really good. I hope you guys like it. I won't spoil anything for anyone who hasn't seen it or read the comic, but yeah, and I actually just started Dexter because my little brother has been like, watch Dexter, so I finally started. It's great. And there's actually a very funny episode I just watched where he's like, I don't like sand, and I was like, all right, Anakin.
And just before we drop the thread, you got to talk to Kaci Wallfall, who plays Naomi.
Yes, I did.
And that interview is on the Nerds of Color.
It was me and a round table of other people. So, like, Black Girl Nerds were there. DCTV Podcasts were there. Who else was there? I think Comic Book Resources. Yeah, there's several other people that were there asking questions. So, it wasn't just me, but it was fun.
Yeah, we'll put the link to that interview in the description and check that out. And Naomi Podcast in the Lituation Room as well. Dominic, what's nerd poppin' in 2022 for you?
Oh, for a Christmas gift, my sister wonderfully gave me a Lego set of Boba Fett's starship, since we were talking about Boba Fett.
Nice.
And it is called, there was a little hubbub about the naming thing, okay? And it is called Boba Fett's starship. Now, classically, it's called Slave One. But, you know, But I get it now. The Lego set made me get it. Like, you don't want to have kids playing like some spaceship called Slave One.
Exactly.
That made me understand the whole thing. But it's one anyway, so there was that. And, it's one of those things. I'm not sure if I'm going to build a thing because it's so beautiful in the box. It is a sort of precious object. Maybe you can consult on the management of toys there. But anyway, Keith, what's nerd popping with you?
So I mentioned the Batman. A bunch of trailers came out for the Batman. I am excited for the Batman. Let me not say that the most recent teaser or the most recent trailer kind of like tamped down my excitement. I'm very excited for the Batman. Put Batman on anything, I'm going to watch it. But 2022 as a year for me is exciting to be a Batman fan because in addition to The Batman, which is coming out in a mere 2 months, which is wild, we are getting, as we mentioned, The Flash, which brings back Michael Keaton's Batman and Ben Affleck's Batman. We are also getting...
Right. Those are both happening this year. Okay,
that's this year as well. That's in November. We are also getting a new Batman animated series, which they just announced Ed Brubaker is joining the creative team, which is dope.
I was at work and saw it and kind of screamed at the announcement. Luckily, I was on my
especially
break.
the Ed Brubaker, I mean, he was famously outspoken about, like, not getting credit for the Winter Soldier. Mm-hmm. And so, like, Bruce Timm was like, why don't you come and be part of our creative team? So that's super exciting. So that's coming out this year. It's the 30th anniversary of Batman Returns, the greatest Christmas movie of all time. Mm-hmm. So 2022 is, and we also touched on they're filming Batgirl currently. Michael Keaton is reprising the role of Batman, and I don't know how that's going to work out because J.K. Simmons is still Commissioner Gordon from the DCEU. He's Barbara's dad, but it's the Michael Keaton Batman. I'm sure the Flash will clear it all up or not, but it's an exciting time to be a Batman fan. And so, it sounded like I was shitting on the Batman earlier, but I am not. I'm very excited for this year. Yes, really Batman is capitalist propaganda.
Yes, all those critiques of Batman are true, and I did not realize all those Batman things are converging at once. But I also wanted to mention something which I said before on this podcast, which is I'm excited for the next movie because Catwoman is always good. There are very strong critiques of Batman, in the macro sense. Catwoman in the movies and TV series is always good. If the worst one is Halle Berry in a sort of weird version of Catwoman, that's pretty good. The worst version is still pretty cool. And I think will end up being before its time.
And Zoe Kravitz could end up being the best Catwoman.
Zoe Kravitz looks great.
Yeah.
Anne Hathaway was pretty good. And all the old TV series Catwomans were always awesome. It's just a great film character.
And there's an animated Catwoman coming out on Blu-ray this year, too. So it's
hell yeah.
Hell of a year to be a Bat fan, despite the capitalist propaganda that is Batman.
Well, with Catwoman as the sort of other...
The foil.
Yeah. The foil of that argument, actually, Batman becomes richer. Isn't that true? Because she's
absolutely.
like the counter-argument to everything about the rich guy showing off his toys.
Right, because speaking of, it's not only the 30th anniversary of Batman Returns, it's the 10th anniversary of Dark Knight Rises, which, in the context of the last 10 years, hits a lot differently now, right? Because you're like, why are we rooting for the cops? Why are we not rooting for Bane?
We'll see what...
Occupy Wall Street versus the cops, and we were supposed to side with the cops? What the fuck?
So I guess what I'm saying is I'm really curious what Catwoman has to say in this new version. In this new iteration of Batman. Batman's going to say the same thing because he always does. My parents, justice, vengeance, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Catwoman's message gets to change through the years.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, super excited for that. Anyway, that's Hard NOC Life for this week. Brittany Monet, how can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter and whatnot at Hi Brittany Monet, and you can check out at Naomi Podcast for both Naomi Podcast and Lituation Room. They are two separate podcasts on the same feed. That's the only way I can describe it. So
what a good value.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Dom, how can people find you on the net?
I'm Dominic Ma, or Dom Ma, DOMMAH, on Instagram or Twitter.
You're also part of Jamal's Twitch stream, the occasional gaming roundup.
Yes,
as well.
We also do the video gaming through Nerds of Color on Twitch with Jamal and a bunch of other gamer folk. That's another Batman thing that's coming out next year is Gotham Knights, probably, whatever, this is a video game argument, but I think I'm very much looking forward to Gotham Knights.
Dominic was so upset that we don't talk about games on this podcast. He was like, let's start a new show where I can finally talk about games.
Well,
Sorry,
and I'm not even like the hardest gamer. I just want to talk about them occasionally. Jamal and Brea Adonis, really, they school me every time we talk, and that's great.
It's a cool show. You can find me on Twitter at @TheRealChow, _real_Chow, and on Instagram at RealKeithChow. Follow the Nerds of Color at the Nerds of Color on all platforms, including YouTube.com, where we repost the Twitch streams of that gaming roundup that you can see Dominic and his friends, including Jamal, Bray, and Adonis. We are also at thenerdsofcolor.org, hardknockmedia.com, where you find all of the podcasts. Support us on patreon.com/thenerdsofcolor. And until next time.
Do you think that alien crawling up Boba's nose was a COVID testing reference? That just seemed very of the times. Awkward thing you need up your nose, but you need it to find your way in the desert.
Possibly. I like that. I like that interpretation. Go get tested, everybody.
Stay safe.